Why should people believe that you didn't kill your daughter?
Because I didn't, you know. We can't make a person believers, you know, and stuff, you know. But I carried her to the hospital and stuff, you know. I didn't have nothing to hide.
He cradled his little girl in his arms. She was blue, unresponsive, and he raced against time. But when doctors pronounced her dead, the state accused him of doing the unthinkable, murdering his daughter. 2 decades later, in a case built on science now called flawed, his life is on the line. On October 16th, 2025, Texas plans to execute a man who still maintains his innocence. This is the story of Robert Roberson, a father condemned by shaken baby syndrome, a diagnosis many medical experts now question. Stay with me, because the real tragedy may be what no one saw. We jump to today, with the execution looming. On July 16th, 2025, a judge in Smith County, Texas, set Robert Roberson's execution date for October 16th, despite ongoing appeals and a pending review by the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. According to CBS News, the Death Penalty Information Center, and the Innocence Project, the execution is scheduled for 6 p.m. local time. Roberson's legal team has filed an emergency motion, arguing that new scientific evidence should be heard before the state carries out a death sentence. Critics say Texas cannot lawfully set a new execution date, while the appeals court is still reviewing the case. His attorneys insist the conviction hinges on outdated and unreliable science, that the diagnosis of shaken baby syndrome used at trial is now widely challenged by medical experts. A bipartisan group of Texas lawmakers has publicly called for clemency, or at least a halt to the execution, citing both procedural and scientific concerns. And notably, author John Grisham has joined the call, describing Roberson's case as a miscarriage of justice. If you want to see more cases like this, hit subscribe now and ring the bell so you don't miss anything. The stage is set, the date is fixed. But before you judge, we rewind. It's January 31st, 2002. Robert Roberson rushes his 2-year-old daughter, Nikki, to the Palestine Regional Medical Center. She's unresponsive, limp, struggling to breathe. For days she'd been sick, a high fever of 104.5 degrees Fahrenheit, vomiting, labored breathing. Roberson tells doctors Nikki fell out of bed earlier that morning. A short fall, not violent shaking. But when the scans come back, doctors see brain swelling, bleeding behind her eyes, and other internal signs. They conclude she's been violently shaken. That triad of symptoms, brain swelling, subdural bleeding, retinal hemorrhages, became the foundation of a shaken baby syndrome diagnosis. And from that moment on, everything changed. The medical staff and investigators immediately suspected abuse, not illness, not accident. Soon after, Nikki passed away, and Robert Roberson was arrested and charged with capital murder. Years later, in 2018, Roberson was diagnosed with autism. His defense attorneys would later argue that his emotionless, withdrawn behavior during questioning was misread by jurors as guilt. At trial, the defense didn't challenge the shaken baby diagnosis. Instead, they accepted the findings and argued Roberson had no intent to harm Nikki. But the lack of broken bones or neck injuries, injuries that usually appear in violent shaking, was largely ignored. In short, the entire conviction rested on a scientific interpretation that today, many experts believe was deeply flawed. Roberson's jury found him guilty, accepting the prosecution's expert testimony without question. He was sentenced to death. Over the years, his legal team filed appeal after appeal, each one highlighting new evidence and questioning the shaken baby theory that had sent him to death row. Since 2002, the medical and scientific consensus has shifted dramatically. Experts now acknowledge that those same triad symptoms, brain swelling, bleeding, and retinal damage, can also appear after short accidental falls, infections, or even previously unknown medical conditions. Dr. Norman Guthkelch, the pediatric neurosurgeon who first proposed the shaken baby hypothesis, later warned that his theory was being misapplied, stretched far beyond its limits. And the American Academy of Pediatrics, while still recognizing abusive head trauma, has cautioned that these symptoms alone should not automatically point to shaking. In February 2025, Roberson's lawyers filed a new appeal, presenting expert reports that directly contradicted the shaken baby diagnosis. They even cited another Texas case from 2024, where the state's highest criminal court admitted that the science behind SBS was unreliable, in fact, nearly identical to Roberson's. In August 2025, his team filed again, this time claiming judicial misconduct and constitutional violations. They argued that the Anderson County court system had denied him due process. If you believe justice should be based on truth, drop your thoughts in the comments. We will be reading and replying to all. This is a case that demands attention. In 2024, Texas lawmakers made a stunning move. They subpoenaed Roberson to testify before a legislative committee, just hours before his scheduled execution. They wanted his testimony and the new evidence to help them stop the execution. That last-minute intervention forced the Texas Supreme Court to issue a stay, halting the execution just in time. But that stay didn't answer the deeper question. And now, with a new date set, the clock is ticking again. As October 16th approaches, support for Roberson continues to grow. A bipartisan group of legislators has renewed their call for clemency, urging the governor to pause the execution. They argue that the state is relying on shaky science and flawed procedure. John Grisham, the best-selling author, has taken up Roberson's cause, visiting him on death row, holding press events, and using his influence to bring national attention to the case. Even Brian Wharton, the lead detective who helped prosecute the case, now says he has serious doubts about the evidence that convicted Roberson. Over 30 medical and scientific experts have written letters to Texas officials, warning that the evidence used to convict him is outdated and misapplied. Protests are spreading. Social media campaigns are growing. Petitions are filling up by the hour. Images of candlelight vigils, courthouse rallies, and signs reading, "Justice for Robert," fill the screen. If you're watching this before October 16th, share this video. The more eyes, the better chance truth gets heard. And now, here's what hangs in the balance. On October 16th, 2025, at 6 p.m., Texas plans to execute a man whose conviction, many say, rests on discredited science. If carried out, Robert Roberson will become the first person in American history executed based on a shaken baby syndrome diagnosis. The question now isn't just guilt or innocence. It's whether our justice system should take a life when the science itself is uncertain. If this execution proceeds, many fear it will set a precedent, one that blurs the line between justice and tragedy. If this story made you question what you thought you knew, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Share this story widely, because until we confront these injustices, they'll repeat. Thank you for watching this episode on True Crime Briefing. And if this case hit, subscribe, like, and share your though in the comments. And let's make sure Robert's name is never forgotten.